Hello there. How are you today? Today's Monday, May 18th, and I'd like to welcome you back to another episode of Hamilton Reads. I'm your host, Mr. Hamilton, and today you guys caught me in my garden. My girlfriend and I, Summer, we were just kind of digging up our garden, getting all the weeds out and all that good stuff, and we tilled a little bit, and now it was time to plant, so I started to plant. Some of the cool stuff that we have in our garden, in the back row, we actually have what's called Jet Star tomatoes, very big, red, juicy tomatoes. In the middle, we have yellow peppers, red peppers, and purple bell peppers. And then we also have 2 sets of cayenne peppers, and then we have 2 sets of habanero peppers. We have a pickle plant, or not a pickle plant, a cucumber plant that's called a pickling cucumber plant, which are good to make pickles, something that I really enjoy to do. And then I just planted a zucchini plant, and then up here we have like kind of a honeydew melon, and then back here we have our little herb garden with some mint, some spearmint, some basil, some rosemary, and some cilantro. So it's a really cool little garden that I'm excited about. It's something that we have in our backyard, and I'm really excited to harvest some of the plants from our garden, harvest some of the vegetables. And one of our favorite things to make is salsa. So we take our tomatoes, we take our cilantro, we take our habanero peppers, our bell peppers, our cayenne peppers, we chop them up, we mix them up, and we kind of have this like pico de gallo type salsa. It's really, really good. And of course we need to get onions at the store because we don't have any onions planted. But then we also like to make pickles. I told you we have a cucumber plant here. Last summer I must have made 36 jars of pickles. I love making pickles. They all turned out super, super tasty. At first, I kind of was messing with the recipe and they weren't that good, and then the more I practiced it, the more I practiced making pickles, the better I got at the recipe, and then I turned out to be able to make some really good like spicy dill pickles, then some like regular dill pickles. I made spears, the long skinny ones, and I also made like the pickle chips, which were circular. So anyway, I'm excited to make pickles, I'm excited to make salsa, and I'm excited to just use all my fresh vegetables in my garden at some point this summer when they're all ready to be harvested. So I'm going to grab our book. Today we're going to read chapters 15 and 16 of Fantastic Mr. Fox. And I'd like to point out, this is actually our second to last episode of this chapter book at least. We'll see whether or not we decide to do this again. But for now, this is our second to last episode for this book. And then our last episode is going to be chapters 17 and chapters 18, which will be tomorrow, Tuesday, May 19th. And then we'll probably take a break for a little bit and decide whether or not to go from there and read another book. So I'll grab my book and I'll have a seat quickly. Seems like a pretty good spot to read. Chapter 15 of Fantastic Mr. Fox is called Bean's Secret Cider Cellar. Mr. Fox examined the wall carefully. He saw that the cement between the bricks was old and crumbly, so he loosened a brick without much trouble and pulled it away. Suddenly, out from the hole where the brick had been, there popped a small, sharp face with whiskers. "Go away," it snapped. "You can't come in here, it's private." "Good Lord," said Badger, "it's a rat." "You saucy beast," said Mr. Fox. "I should have guessed we'd find you down here somewhere." "Go away," shrieked Rat. "Go on, beat it. This is my private pitch." "Oh, shut up," said Mr. Fox. "I will not shut up," shrieked Rat. "This is my place. I got here first." Mr. Fox gave a brilliant smile, flashing his white teeth. "My dear Rat," he said softly, "I am a hungry fellow, and if you don't hop it quickly, I shall eat you up in one gulp." And that did it. Rat popped back fast out of sight. Mr. Fox laughed and began pulling more bricks out of the wall. When he made a biggish hole, he crept through it. Badger and the smallest fox followed him in. They found themselves in a vast, damp, gloomy cellar. "This is it," cried Mr. Fox. "This is what?" said Badger. "The place is empty." "Where are the turkeys?" asked the smallest fox, staring into the gloom. "I thought Bean was a turkey man." "Oh, he is a turkey man," said Mr. Fox, "but we're not after turkeys now. We've got plenty of food." "Then what do we need, Dad?" Take a look around," said Mr. Fox. "Don't you see anything that interests you?" Badger and the smallest fox peered into the half-darkness. As their eyes became accustomed to the gloom, they began to see what looked like a whole lot of big glass jars standing upon shelves around the walls. They went closer. They were jars. There were hundreds of them, and upon each one was written the word cider. The smallest fox leaped high in the air. "Oh, Dad," he cried out. "Look what we found! It's cider!" "Exactly," said Mr. Fox. "Oh, tremendous," shouted Badger. "Being secret cider cellar," said Mr. Fox. "But go carefully, my dears, don't make a noise. This cellar is right underneath the farmhouse itself." "Oh, cider," said Badger, "is especially good for badgers. We take it as medicine. 1 large glass 3 times a day with meals and another at bedtime." "Well, it'd make the feast into a banquet," said Mr. Fox. While they were talking, the smallest fox had sneaked a jar off the shelf and had taken a gulp. "Oh, wow," he gasped. "Wowee!" You must understand, this was not the ordinary weak fizzy cider one buys in a store. It was the real stuff, a home-brewed, fiery mix of apple cider that burned in your throat and boiled in your stomach. "Ah," gasped the small fox, "this is some cider." "Oh, that's quite enough of that," said Mr. Fox, grabbing the jar and putting it on his own lips. He took a tremendous gulp. "Oh, it's miraculous," he whispered, fighting for breath. "It's fabulous. It's beautiful." "Well, it's my turn," said Badger, taking the jar and tilting his head well back. The cider gurgled and bubbled down his throat. "Oh, it's like melted gold," he gasped. "Oh, Foxy, it's like drinking sunbeams and rainbows." "You're poaching," shrieked Rat. "Put that down at once. There'll be none left for me." Rat was perched upon the highest shelf in the cellar, peering out from behind a huge jar. There was a small rubber tube inserted in the neck of the jar, and a rat was using this tube to suck out the cider. "Oh, stop it," said Mr. Fox. "Mind your own business," shrieked Rat, "and if you great clumsy brutes come messing around here, we'll all be caught. Get out and leave me alone." At that moment, they heard a woman's voice calling in the house above them. "Hurry up and get that cider, Mabel," the voice called. "You know Mr. Bean doesn't like to be kept waiting, especially when he's been all night outside in a tent." The animals froze. They stayed absolutely still, their ears pricked, their bodies tense. Then they heard the sound of a door opening. The door was at the top of a flight of stone steps leading down from the house to the cellar. And now someone was starting to come down those steps. The next chapter is chapter 16, and it's called The Woman. "Oh, quick," said Mr. Fox, "hide." He and Badger and the smallest fox jump up onto a shelf and crouched behind a row of big cider jars. Peering around the jars, they saw a huge woman coming down into the cellar. At the foot of the steps, the woman paused, looking to right and left. Then she turned and headed straight for the place where Mr. Fox and Badger and the smallest fox were hiding. She stopped right in front of them. The only thing between her and them was a row of cider jars. She was so close, Mr. Fox could hear the sound of her breathing. Peeping through the crack between 2 bottles, he noticed that she carried a big rolling pin in one hand. Here's the picture of the woman carrying the big rolling pin in one hand, about to come into the basement, into the cider cellar. "How many will he want this time, Mrs. Bean?" the woman shouted. And from the top of the steps, the other voices called back, "Bring 2 or 3 jars." "He drank 4 yesterday, Mrs. Bean." "Yes, but he won't want that many today because he's not going to be up there more than a few hours longer. He says the fox is bound to make a run for it this morning. It can't possibly stay down that hole another day without food." The woman in the cellar reached out and lifted a jar of cider from the shelf. The jar she took was next but one to the jar behind Mr. Fox was crouching. "I'll be glad when the rotten brute is killed and strung up on the front porch," she called out. "And by the way, Mrs. Bean, your husband promised I could have the tail as a souvenir." "The tail's been all shot to pieces," said the voice from upstairs. "Didn't you know that?" "You mean it's been ruined?" "Of course it's been ruined. They shot the tail but missed the fox." "Oh, heck," said the big woman. "I did so want that tail." Well, you can have the head instead, Mabel. You can get it stuffed and hang it on your bedroom wall. Now hurry up with that cider. And here's the picture of Mabel. I'm assuming she's kind of like the housekeeper, the maid. And if you look really closely, you can see Mr. Fox right over here with his buddies hanging out behind the jars, trying not to be seen. Yes, ma'am, I'm coming, said the big woman as she took a second jar from the shelf. If she takes one more, she'll see us, thought Mr. Fox. He could feel the smallest fox's body pressed tightly against his own, quivering with excitement. Will 2 be enough, Mrs. Bean, or shall I take 3? Oh, my goodness, Mabel, I don't care so long as you get a move on. Well, then 2 it is, said the huge woman, speaking to herself now. He drinks too much of it anyway. Carrying a jar in each hand and with the rolling pin tucked under one arm, she walked away across the cellar. At the foot of the steps, she paused and looked around, sniffing the air. There's rats down here again, Mrs. Bean. I can smell them. Well, then poison them. Woman, poison them. You know where the poison is. Yes, ma'am, said Mrs. Mabel. She climbed slowly out of sight up the steps. The door slammed. Well, quick, said Mr. Fox. Grab a jar each and run for it. Rat stood on his high shelf and shrieked. What did I tell you? You nearly got nabbed, didn't you? You nearly gave them the game away. You keep out of here from now on. I don't want you around. This is my place. You, said Mr. Fox, are going to be poisoned. Oh, poppycock, said Rat. I sit up here and watch her putting the stuff down. She'll never get me. Mr. Fox and Badger and the smallest fox ran across the cellar, clutching a jar each. Goodbye, Rat, they called out as they disappeared through the hole in the walls. Thanks for the lovely cider. Thieves! Shrieked Rat. Robbers! Bandits! Burglars! That's the end of the chapter. That's where we're going to stop today. That's where we're going to pick up tomorrow, Tuesday, May 19th. So, again, thank you for stopping by. I was pretty excited to have you guys check out my garden today. I'm really proud of it. It's something that isn't the biggest garden in the world, but it's something that I think as long as we can keep up with and show a lot of dedication throughout the next few months, we'll be able to get a lot of really cool vegetables and herbs and spices and all that good stuff. I'm excited to make, I was even thinking as I was reading, I'm excited to make my own mint tea this summer with the mint that we have from the garden, some spearmint tea. I'm excited about that. And I really like putting cilantro on a lot of stuff. Like cilantro is good on tacos, burritos, it's good on like eggs, salads, it's good on a lot of stuff. So I highly recommend cilantro. It's good on chicken, all that good stuff. Anyway, so we're gonna move forward to our shirt and sock segment. Today I'm wearing kind of beat up clothes because I was gardening and I didn't want to get my clothes too dirty. So I'm wearing a really old YWCA shirt. It's probably a shirt I've had for 5 or so years, but it says eliminating racism and empowering women. And I think that's something that's super important and something that the YWCA stands for, and they represent that. So eliminating racism, empowering women is something that the YWCA stands by, and I absolutely support that. So shout out to the YWCA, that's my shirt. And then my socks today are actually mismatched because I couldn't find the set of either one of these, but I thought that they were both fitting for what I'm doing today being in the garden, so I'll show you these. Right here I have my avocado socks, and over here I've got my pickle socks. I thought my pickle socks were pretty prudent for our gardening today because last summer I was able to garden up at my summer camp, and the thing I was most proud of was getting a lot of cucumbers, and like I said, I probably made 36 jars of pickles, and I love them. I gave them to my friends, my family, and they really enjoyed them as well. So I like the pickles, can't wait to have them. Now for my shout outs today, I would like to shout out number one to my grandmother. My grandmother told me that she has a surprise for me, that I need to stop by her house and get a surprise, so I'm really looking forward to that. Who knows what the surprise is? I would also like to shout out to Ruby Martin, who is my boss at the YWCA. Shout out to Ruby. I appreciate all that you do to support me and give me guidance as a camp director through the summer, so I appreciate that. And then also, I would just like to shout out to all the students that were on our Zoom call this morning. We had a Monday morning Zoom call with our staff of Laurel Life at North Hills, and we also had a handful of our students on there. So shout out to the students that were able to stop by And also shout out to the students that missed it. We miss you guys, and we hope that you guys are able to maybe jump on future calls. So thanks for stopping by, and check back tomorrow for another episode of Hamilton Reads. Bye.